Hey, y'all, this week's episode is truly a dream come true for me. This week's guest is Mark Batterson. You may know him. He is the lead pastor of National Community Church in Washington, D.C., but he is also a prolific writer, New York Times bestseller of over 24 books. His latest is called A Million Little Miracles, Rediscover a God Who is Bigger Than Big, Closer Than Close, and Gooder Than Good, which killer subtitle. I feel like I fangirled all over him. I told him at the beginning of the episode, has such a special place in my life as a believer, starting back to his first book that I read when I was in college. And this book is really, he said it this way, an invitation to rediscover the joyfulness of God and the playfulness of God. So I think I'm not going to give too much away, but this is such a fun conversation. His goal is to restore childlike wonder and enjoyment of the world God created, to remind us how much we must wonder and awe and enjoy the God who created it. So, especially if your faith has been feeling a little heavy or tested or strained, this is a place for you to come to rediscover God who is bigger than big, closer than close, gooder than good. And I would add funner than fun based on this conversation. So, y'all will love this quick interview with Mark Batterson. I'm so thankful to have him. Hey y'all, I'm Maddie, author, speaker, and certified sommelier. I think we can all agree that life can get pretty tough at times. So I'm going on a journey to uncover how some of my favorite people are chasing joy in their lives. And I'm bringing you along with me. Through their personal stories and funny encounters, I'm chatting with authors and entrepreneurs, musicians and brands to learn how they're hanging on to the good in life, even as trouble comes. Because as life gets hard, joy is a choice we can make. Together. I'm Maddie, and this is the Enjoy Life podcast. Mark, welcome to the Enjoy Life podcast. I am so grateful to have you and really excited to talk about your new book.
Hey, what a joy, Maddie. And I'm excited too. You write a book and it's kind of in your spirit, but then it's really more than a book. It feels like kind of a life message. And so can't wait to have a conversation about it.
Well, you're obviously such a prolific writer, and I just have to tell you, like Circle Maker, which came out when I was in college, to date both of us a tad, was truly the first, I think, book of faith, especially book about prayer, that I ever read as an adult. I really mean that outside of just growing up in a Christian home and school, which I'm tremendously thankful for. But it felt like it opened the window to, okay, what is it that I'm really going to believe, as an adult? And so I just want to thank you for that. We've got a long history, and you didn't even know it.
I love it. Well, one of my prayers, and this would be a prayer for everybody who's listening, is faith with your fingerprint on it. That, at some point you have to own it. It has to own you. And pretty fun to know that a book that I wrote many, many years ago is a piece of your puzzle, Maddie. So thank you.
It is for sure. And before we dive into your most recent book, how I start all the episodes is, because I'm in Nashville and music brings me joy, I ask my guests, if you had a walkout song, like a baseball player, like for your life at this moment, what would your song be?
Oh my goodness, you're hitting me cold out of the gate.
I know it's cruel. I don't ever warn anybody.
I love the question. The hard thing is choosing, but since we're going to talk a little bit about miracles, there's this great are you, Lord, and this little line of lyrics, it's your breath in my lungs. And part of why I love it is I had severe asthma for 40 years, but I don't anymore.
Yeah.
July 2nd, 2016, pretty amazing moment. Haven't touched an inhaler from that day to this day. And so that might be my walkout song. In fact, run out song. I can run to.
That's right. I don't want to see you walking. I want to see you sprinting. That's amazing. I love that. And your hat says Miracle You, and your new book is titled A Million Little Miracles, Rediscover the God Who is Bigger Than Big, Closer Than Close, and Gooder Than Good. And maybe one of my favorite subtitles I've read in a while. So I want to know, just to kick off, you said that these books are messages of your life, like put in your soul. And the way you break this message down is kind of in 3 different parts. And I think those are important to people understanding what they're going to walk into in this book. And so, can you kind of tell us like what those three parts, like what the titles of them are? They're really beautiful metaphors, and like what you hope readers to glean from these three kind of things that you focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. So God is bigger than big is just kind of a fun, playful way to say that God is transcendent. He's sovereign. He doesn't exist within the four space time dimensions that he created. And then closer than close is this opposite idea of how amazing is this, Maddie, that God knows the number of hairs on our head, collects our tears in his bottle, our names tattooed on the palm of his hand. And so he's an intimate God. And then, thanks to my editors who let me say gooder than good, it took a little bit of convincing, but it's this idea that, newsflash, God is in a good mood.
I love that.
He created us with these 43 facial muscles that can form a smile, which is a superpower.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of a reimagination of who God is from scripture. So I think in the beginning, God created us in his image. We've been creating God in our image ever since. And so what happens is you end up with a God who kind of looks like you and thinks like you. And my argument is that God is so much bigger and closer and better than what you imagine him to be. It is rediscovering that God. And that might involve a little bit of deconstructing and reconstructing, and that's okay. I think all of us have to go through that process as we grow in our understanding of who God is.
Yeah. Can you speak to kind of what that means? Like, what is that process of deconstruction? Not in like a very intense apologetic way that it sometimes is discussed, but I mean, as a normal Christian who is not walking into this conversation doubting your belief in God, what sort of like deconstruction and rediscovery are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, big picture, the more you know how much you don't know.
Yeah.
And so the irony of science, and I'll just say this up front, Albert Einstein said science without religion is lame, religion without science is blind. And so, newsflash, science is our friend. All truth is God's truth. Every ology is a branch of theology. So where I'm going with that is I want to approach my theology with a degree of critical realism. In other words, I don't know everything there is to know. I want to have a humble spirit. I mean, Tozer said eternity won't be long enough to learn all that God is or praise him for all that he's done. And so it's more about, I first started following Jesus when I was 5, but I had a 5-year-old understanding, and then I had a 17-year-old understanding and a 35-year-old understanding. And so the way I like to say it is, if you stay humble and stay hungry,
That's good.
There's nothing God can't do in you or through you. And so it's a humble approach to a God who's infinite, and we don't have a category for it. So it's more just the continual growing, and I would say growing in gratitude and growing in wonder for who God is and what God has created.
Yeah. I'm so thankful for this book. Number one, I just want to say it's really fun to read. So people who like, you're like, I don't know, not another theology book. Like, no, man, pick this book up. It is rich in theology, but it is fun to read. It feels very like, what is it? What did we learn? Like in middle, like stream of consciousness a little bit. I mean that as a compliment. I know you labored over edits and stuff like that, but it feels like we're just sitting down talking to you and looking at the world through your eyes, which is clearly one of wonder, and it's cool. And you learn a lot. Like, talk about integrating like your faith with science and nature. Like, you just learn a lot of cool stuff in this book that you put in here, the million little miracles. And so I'll just give that plug for it from the start.
Can I just interject
Please.
something? Just a curiosity question. Do you have a pet, an animal? Do you have a
Yeah, is she barking?
cat
Can
or
we
a
No,
dog?
I have a lab. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a little cockapoo. So one of the fun facts in the book is that not only do you and I have a unique fingerprint, dogs have a unique nose print.
That's crazy.
Like, Do you need to know that to live a long, happy, healthy life? No, no. But I think it makes it even more meaningful. And so what I try to do in the book is just sprinkle a few of those fun facts. And I do think they are creation clues
Yeah, that's
that
good.
God has left evidence of his divine qualities, of his invisible nature, Romans 1:20. And whether it's a dog's nose print or the fact that cows run away from storms, but buffalo run toward storms is so
Yeah.
fascinating to me. We'll just tease that and let that hang out
Yeah,
there. But
that's a good teaser.
fun.
If you're the person who, like, always wants to have interesting facts at the party, like, this right here is a tool for you, my friend. It's pretty fun. So, just with that plug, but you mentioned those things, and you mentioned, obviously, nature is a big part of, especially the first, section about the God who is bigger than big. So, I just wanna ask you kinda, like, simply and practically, as a guy who lives in Washington, DC, what is your engagement in sort of, respite with nature look like for a lot of people who are like, I don't live out west. Like, I don't live on a farm. Like, how am I supposed to meet God in creation in my daily life? Like, what's that like for you?
Well, the very short answer would be look up. Which is, by the way, exactly what God said to
Yeah.
Abram as he sat inside his tent. He said, go outside, look up, and count the stars. So we actually live on Capitol Hill, Maddie. My wife and I raised our three kids who are now in their 20s on the hill. So we grew up in a concrete
Yeah.
jungle with sirens and garbage trucks, and but I'll sneak over to Roosevelt Island,
Mm,
or we'll go down to the National Mall. And what I found is if you lose touch with nature, you lose touch with nature's God.
mhm.
So, one practical idea, George Washington Carver is part of my Mount Rushmore. I have four pictures behind my desk, and G.W. Carver is one of them. He was born a slave, first to graduate from University of or Iowa State and become a professor there. But his life verse was Job 12:7. Speak to the earth and it will teach you. And so he'd get up at 4 a.m. and just take prayer walks through the woods. And so I think there's a way just to enjoy what God has created. If you lose touch with nature, you lose touch with nature's God.
Yeah, that's good.
And so I interject a lot into the book, be it John Muir climbing a tree in
Mhm.
1874 during a snowstorm, or the 3 day effect that it's crazy. Studies have found that if you get into the wilderness for 3 days, your creativity will
That's
skyrocket.
wild.
And so why is it then that Jesus went out and spent 40 days in
Mm.
the wilderness? Things that make you go, hmm. I think there's something about getting out of our routine that can be part of our spiritual growth.
Yeah, you write the word and use the term rewilding in the book. I think that's so awesome. I just think that feels fun, right? That's just re-engaging with nature. Even if, like you said, it's just for a prayer walk or something like that. So I just appreciate that call to creation. That's been a big part of my spiritual growth, a big part of healing in really tough seasons. And so I always want to bring people back to, like, the original creation is the first stamp that we see of God's character. Like, get there.
You put me on the spot with walkout
Oh
song.
gosh. You're gonna return the favor?
What is the place in nature? Like for me, it might have been hiking the Grand Canyon rim to rim. That oh my goodness, what a that close encounter with nature was an all timer for me. Do you have a place that you're like, oh, when I went here, just God came alive? Just a curiosity question.
Yeah, I mean, where I live in Tennessee, we're very in nature in terms of, I grew up kind of on a farm, not with animals, but just a property, and my parents still have that. And so we're always out, on the lake, on the rivers. And so that has a very special place in my heart. But the really life-changing, I think, moment for me was when my late husband passed away. We were 28, that was 6 years ago, and he passed from a freak accident in Florida at the beach. And I remember sitting there looking out at the ocean from the balcony of this hotel the day that he had passed, and feeling so detached from God, but so desperate for God, if that makes sense, if people can identify with that. And in his kind way, I think the Holy Spirit just like drawing my eyes to the power of the ocean and just
Mm,
saying like, this is my power. Like this comes in and out every single day strictly because I call it to do so. And like that power is yours. And so even in
mm,
that broken moment, I remember thinking like he is the only power that can carry me through whatever is ahead. And then, the fast forward and sort of beauty and redemptive part of that is when I got remarried last year, we got married at that same beach, looking over that same ocean because I knew I was like, God will redeem the worst part in the worst place of my life. And like, we're going to see it and honor it. And I like have chills saying it to you. And it's not a new story to me. So I think the
wow.
ocean will always be that is like, you are always safe because his power in you is beyond all the power it takes to maintain every ocean in the
Wow.
world. So
Wow. That
yeah,
is holy
it's
ground.
wild, man.
And,
It's
you
amazing.
know, and it might be worth just noting. I bet everybody who's listening right now is thinking about kind of those places. And what strikes me is that some of those holy ground places for me, Maddie, are like, a Grand
Mm,
Canyon, or I've been to the Galapagos Islands and gone swimming with sea
yeah.
lions. Like, those moments are pretty
Yeah.
exotic, but I would also say a cemetery
Mhm.
where we buried my father-in-law at an age that was much too
Mm.
young, but singing "It Is Well with My
Mhm.
Soul" in the presence of God and knowing God in those moments of pain and in those moments where you have unanswered
Mhm.
questions. That is a miracle as well.
Yeah.
And wow,
Yeah. Yeah,
powerful.
it is. I think a big thing for me was in that whole season, the consistency of God and the faithfulness of God, I think was physically evident outdoors, whether it was a Grand Canyon or me taking my dog out for a walk in a way that he didn't feel consistent in my life. And I had to look there to see he's bigger than big and he's transcendent and he is powerful and consistent. So that whole part of the book spoke to me in a lot of ways for those reasons. So I thank you. We could
Mm,
probably tell a million stories about where we've seen him in nature. But
yes.
one of the other big things I really, really loved, I want you to touch on is kind of, I think, in the gooder than good part. But you use it all throughout the book. Is you talk about choosing a word for the year, which a lot of us do, and that I guess in whatever year you were writing this book, that your word was Tav. Can you talk about Tav? Tell us what it is. Tell us why you chose it, and just tell us why it's awesome because I loved it.
Yeah. Well, it's a Hebrew word, and it seven times in Genesis 1 that word it surfaces and it's translated good, and God saw that it was good, and he steps back. It's almost like an artist stepping back from the canvas that they've just created. It's almost like God says, I outdid myself, if that were possible.
Yeah.
Like, look at this, like,
Yeah.
wow. But I would also describe it as original emotion,
Mm,
that it's childlike wonder, it's pure delight,
mhm,
it's joy unspeakable. And so, Maddie, I think what's powerful is that God is demonstrating something for us, that at the end of every day, step back and experience the goodness of
mhm,
God. And by the way, I'll just make this quick. There are 171,000 words in English. There are only 8,000 words in biblical
mhm,
Hebrew. So English has more words, but I would argue that Hebrew words have more meaning. And
yeah.
so this word is not just good, it's gooder than good. It's as good as it gets. It's too good to be true, but it is. It's everything that is good and true and
Mm,
beautiful. And that's what our God has created for our enjoyment.
mm.
This is a God who is just, I mean, there are 300,000 species of beetles, which seems like creative
Little
overkill to me.
excessive. Yeah.
But this is a God who must love variety and seems to just enjoy the diversity of all that he's created.
Yeah.
So I think part of what I'm getting at is recapturing that original emotion. Because if you aren't careful, life can become a chore and a bore. What happens?
Mm.
You start taking things for granted instead of taking them for gratitude. And that really is the heartbeat of this book.
Yeah.
You know, Einstein said only two ways to live your life. One is as if nothing is a miracle, the other is as if everything is. And so at the end of the book, I think the goal is every heartbeat,
Yeah.
every breath I
Yeah.
take, everything, all of it, a miracle,
Yeah.
a testament to the God who created us. And you notice too, Maddie, I'm not afraid to get in our business a little bit. I'm a little weary of those who tout this thing is a cosmic accident.
Mm.
It's not common sense and it's not good
Yeah.
science. We know intelligent design when we see it. And so it takes some tremendous intellectual gymnastics to work your way around a creator.
Mhm.
And I think it's time to just, hey, let's level the playing field. There's tremendous
Yeah.
evidence for a creator who left his fingerprints over everything there
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
That's for sure. And I think like just the whole spirit and tone. I think you said humble and hungry earlier is such an awesome kind of way to approach life. But there is just truly a childlike, you said wonder and awe about this book. And I think that, we just so quickly and easily grow up or learn out of that sort of posture as humans. And so I think it's a wonderful call to just come back and like see the world as a kid. Like I just had my first baby and he's 4 months old, and like even just to see him discover his feet, it's like why do I miss all of these beautiful tiny things because I've grown up out of them. And I think it's just such an incredible invitation to call us to do that. And you coach us through it so well. And just there's a point kind of where I'd love to land to is you present or represent to us a God who is playful, right? Who is fun, who, like you just kind of said, step backs and looks at what he did and said, man, that was pretty cool. That's Tav. And so I just love that you allow us to rediscover that part of who God is. And you even write in the book, like, a play deficit is as detrimental to health as a sleep deficit. Like, how is that real? That's amazing. So
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome.
It's pretty fun that the same guy, Sir Francis Bacon, who kind of came up with the scientific method, if you will, he said that we are God's
Hmm.
playfellows and that we're in this great grand game, he called it, of almost hide and seek. That Solomon said it this way in the Proverbs, that God has concealed certain things from us. And I think for the joy of us finding it out.
Hmm.
Like, I think when we landed a man on the moon, I think God probably turned to the angels in heaven and said, I told you, I knew they could do it. And same with, discovering double helix DNA or the Hubble
Mm.
telescope, taking pictures of the pillars of creation, millions of light years away from planet Earth. I think all of those things speak to a God who has a playful
Mm.
side. And he is anything but a cosmic killjoy.
Yeah.
In fact, Psalm 104 says that he formed the Leviathan, which we think some kind of sea
Yeah.
creature, but might be a whale. He formed the Leviathan to frolic. And the Hebrew there is to sport, to
Yeah.
play. Like, wait, so you're telling me that God made an entire species just to
Just
play
play.
in the ocean? Yes, that is exactly what I'm telling you. And Maddie, congratulations, four
Oh,
months
thank
old.
you.
And we now have our first grandson who's 6 months
Oh,
old.
amazing.
And what a joy. Uh, Here's what parents and grandparents will identify with. There are few things that you enjoy more than watching your kids play,
Yeah.
whether it's playing an instrument,
Mm.
playing sports, or playing Legos. Like, whatever it is, there's a God who created us with this playful side, and God has a playful
Yeah.
personality. And so the book is kind of an invitation back into that to recapture that childlike wonder about God and about life.
Yeah, I could not wrap it up better myself, honestly. I think, especially for anyone who has gone through something that feels like, it has threatened the joy of your faith, or has caused you to doubt the bigness, the smallness, the goodness, and the playfulness of God. I think it just rewrites a lot of the scripts that culture tells us that he is a cosmic killjoy, because he's not. And so I think this is truly for anyone. It's so fun to read. It is so beautifully invigorating for anyone who's anywhere in faith. And I'm just really thankful for you doing it, and taking time to just talk to us about what it means to you, and what it means to all of us. So I'm really grateful, Mark.
Hey, what a joy. And in the spirit of the book, should we end with a fun fact?
Love it. Hit us with it.
Boom. We're on a planet that's spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, simultaneously speeding through space at 67,000 miles per hour. So, friends, even on a day you didn't get much done, you did travel 1.6 million miles in space.
I love it.
And Maddie, what I'm doing there is having a little bit of fun, because I don't know anybody at the end of the day that kneels next to their bed and says, Lord, thanks for keeping us in
Yeah,
orbit.
right?
We take the big things for granted. My argument is that we are living a miracle, that even the planet we're on, in the universe that we're in, it's anything but
That's for
ordinary.
sure.
It's a daily miracle. That sunrise and sunset. Bravo, God, bravo.
Yeah.
The angels shout encore, Psalm 29. There you have
I
it.
love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Y'all go follow Mark if you don't already. Get A Million Little Miracles. And if you're not a reader, you're a little ADD, I'm hoping you do the audiobook. Do you do the audiobook? Yeah.
I do.
Do that.
Yep.
I might just listen to it again just to hear you give us all the fun facts. All right. Thank you so much, Mark. We appreciate you.
Thank you. God bless.
A huge thanks to you for listening. If you liked what you heard here today, if you feel encouraged or found a little joy, please like or subscribe so you can get updates on all the new episodes. And please visit me at maddiejackson.net to check out both my books and the coming soon 6-week course on grief and hope.